Soar above with those who dare to look at the world from a new perspective and ask, what if? You're listening to the Altitude Podcast from Eagleview.
Hi, I'm Piers Dormeyer, CEO of Eagleview Technologies. On this show, we bring you stories of pioneers who are redefining the boundaries of their fields. Today's guest is the CEO and co-founder of TriSmart Solar, Mark Bench. TriSmart is a leading renewable energy company based in Texas, and Mark is a leader in the solar industry. Can't wait to dig into all things solar with him, so let's get to it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So give me some background on TriSmart. I mean, how did you get into the business? And yeah, tell me your story.
Yeah, TriSmart started when I moved to Texas, actually, in 2010. I grew up in Utah. I come from the door-to-door industry. Cut my teeth at the Apex Vivint era. Loved my experience there. Moved out to Texas. Decided to start my own home security, home automation company. And then in 2016, 2017, we rebranded to TriSmart and added solar to the home services mix. And we started selling solar. Went through the dealer network path. Started with Solar City. And then eventually decided to leave, had a few other pit stops along the way, and decided to start doing our own installs by 2017. It's been a fun ride. We decided our approach was if we could sell solar in markets like Houston, Texas, for example, where there's more overcast, less production, lowest cost of energy in most areas of Houston relative to the rest of the country, we figured if we could make it pencil here without subsidies other than the federal tax credit, then we'd be setting ourselves up for success. So we started very early and we expanded our footprint rapidly. So now in Texas, we've done over 13,000 solar projects and we have over 7. Now, actually, we just opened our 8th warehouse in the state and we've been very disciplined to stay here. There was a time where we opened 5 other states, thought we'd be ambitious and grow rapidly, and quickly realized within about a year and a half that that wasn't so great of an idea for us because we were no longer delivering a best-in-class experience. So our methodology has always been, at least for the last couple of years, is let's focus where we are, let's get really good at where we are, and let's be disciplined. So we're committed to being a regional player. And we love Texas. It's been great for us. There's a lot of deregulation happening here. Solar is still very friendly here and the adoption rate is increasing rapidly. So yeah, I come from the sales background and then I had to kind of transition into becoming a construction company, which was new for me. So I hired some coaches. I have executive coaches that I meet with every week. And then I rely heavily on our executive team. We lead it more like a democracy. We align on things and we move methodically with our other 25 managers and directors in the company. And we enroll everyone in the vision and we take it one day at a time.
Yeah, I love that philosophy of picking a market like Texas, especially when I think you entered it with that idea that if I can do it here, I can do it anywhere. And I think it's remarkable that you managed to keep the discipline to stay really focused, right? And like obviously some trials and tribulations. I'm sure there's a lot to that story. But outside of what you mentioned, what's unique about operating a solar company in Texas?
Yeah, some of the unique things about operating here is the deregulated facet that we deal with. Our customers have, in most cases, hundreds of different options to choose from with their energy providers. So educating them on how solar impacts that decision is important. Texas is also very large. There's a lot of different municipalities and AHJs here. So, we've seen a lot of companies try and come here from out of state. And they'll start with maybe like a Dallas Fort Worth warehouse or a Houston warehouse. And then they quickly realize it's much different because of the way the utilities are set up and the way the jurisdictions are set up. So we also deal with, some intermittent rain that can impact, the storms can impact solar projects. So you got to be prepared for that and how to deal with it. And then in certain parts of Texas, there's a lot of trees. So you got to make sure you got your shading analysis dialed in. And then there's also a lot of competition. There's not only competition from other solar companies that are trying to make it work here. There's also a lot of competition in the deregulated markets. These energy providers, they can get really aggressive with their pricing schemes and they can sometimes confuse consumers. But yeah, overall, I think it's a great market. There's an abundance of people here that need and want solar. So we're here to stay.
Yeah, and I think just the weather dynamics you mentioned, I mean, you got to get it all in Houston. You've got hail and windstorms, and then you've got hurricane season that you got to be thinking about. And I don't think glass plays well in either of those conditions.
And then you go from, like a Houston to an El Paso, where we do a decent amount as well. Now you're in the desert and you're dealing with tile roofs instead of composite shingle, and the dynamics there are much different. So yeah, that is kind of fun. We almost get the full scope of all the different types of projects just in one state, because the climate dramatically changes from the east to west of Texas.
Totally. You mentioned the growth, you mentioned the success, you mentioned that you have employed coaches throughout the business over time. But what would you say is one of the main components driving the success of the enterprise?
Yeah, I think our culture, I know a lot of leaders talk about culture. I'm going to put a staple on that. We are really clear on our vision. People are our purpose. One of our core values is to develop people. And so one of the things I noticed earlier in my career was just how important it is to connect with humanity and human beings. And so there's always a lot of money to be made, and a lot of business owners start businesses because they want to make money and they want to make a difference. Most people genuinely care and they want to do good by humanity. When the shift occurred to focus on people and developing people, our culture came with it. So we have a very open culture. We're very collaborative. I'm naturally a collaborative leader. I like to share best practices. I like to be in communication with all the industry leaders that I can. And so we take that same approach here at TriSmart. Everyone has a voice. We meet quarterly as a leadership team, not just the executives, but we also get our directors and our managers in the same room, and we solve problems together. And we align on our, what we call promises for the quarter. And we support each other throughout the quarter to ensure that we have all the conditions of satisfaction necessary to facilitate. So yeah, core values here, developing people. We certainly want to remain connected. We're data driven. So we really like to analyze and measure as much data as we can and discuss that data together and make decisions together or brainstorm together. And then integrity is, of course, extremely important. Do what you say when you say you're going to do it. And then we're always striving to be best in class. So everything we do, we always look for ways to do it better for the consumer, to protect them and deliver that experience they're looking for. And then, of course, we treat all of our sales teams like customers, and then our employees in the same fashion. So yeah, with that culture, we also, the coaches I mentioned have been with me on my journey for almost 5 years now. And they've been very instrumental in getting me out of my own way. And they also each have one-on-one time with each of the executive team members once a week. And then we also do an executive coaching call. So, if you're out to have high performance, I'd say get a coach. All the top performing athletes in the world have multiple coaches for different reasons, whether it's nutrition or strength training or business in general, or, performance management in regard to financial performance. So I can't stress enough to any business owner out there how important it is to have a mentor, a coach, whatever it is, have someone that will kind of help you become your best self.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. I couldn't agree more. And I think when you start talking about people development, a lot of people talk about how important it is. Very few people, I think, actually execute on programs to actually do it, especially down through the organization. So having a program like that is huge. I want to pivot a little bit and talk a little bit about, talk to me about the Residential Solar Association that you're president of, I hear.
Yeah, I love it. So yeah, the Residential Solar Association, in short, is we call it the RSA. It got formalized earlier this year. Essentially, a group of people got together, about 20 to 25 leaders in the residential solar sector over a year ago. And we really brought the question of how can we better the industry? What does the industry need? How do we support it? How do we create longevity? Because we can clearly see that there's things happening in the industry and in the economy that can create conflict with the industry and its survival, or in thriving, I should say. So a bunch of leaders got together. I got invited to the party by some people that I trust and certainly care about. And so I showed up and these conversations started happening. And, half the people in the room were my competitors. And I thought, what's going on here? But by the end of the 2 days that we spent together, there was an immediate creation of trust because we all agreed that we were going to put our self-interests aside and our egos at the door and commit to what the industry needed at large. And so that's how the Residential Solar Association got, formulated. And then there was elections. I got nominated to become the president. I said yes. I got elected. And it's been such an amazing journey because we have 11 board members now. from different companies, and we have 5 steering committee members that are advising the board. And we're also about to launch some advisors to the board. So it's been, the commitment and vision of the RSA is pretty simple. We want to unify the voice of the residential sector. There's a lot of trade associations out there that are doing a pretty good job, like SIA. We all know that they've done amazing things for the industry. They have a lot of other things they're focused on. And I think residential, because it's such a small sector of renewable, doesn't get all the time and attention that we would like it to have. And so we're looking for ways to collaborate with SIA on larger initiatives. But right now, I would say the RSA is the largest and most influential trade association in the space that's getting things done. So we're working with policymakers, we're working with industry leaders to collaborate on what are the best practices that we need to implement and deploy. How can we protect consumers in a very fast and efficient way? How do we strengthen installers and their profitability so we can avoid more and more of them going out of business? And so we're looking at ways to strengthen one another and provide feedback. And then, of course, we're also just on a mission to continue to elevate and transform the industry at large to ensure that it's safe, it's protected, and really thriving. So we're looking for anyone and everyone who's interested in that kind of collaboration. We're very collaborative. We're obviously looking for ways in which we can collaborate with attorneys generals and policymakers and all the people that are involved in the industry to ensure that we're all building things that work well for everyone, not just one side or the other, right?
Yeah. Obviously, there's no shortage of challenges to kind of take on, especially with a group of collaborative leaders. But what would you say is the single major thing that the solar industry could improve broadly?
Yeah, I think consumer protection right now is the focal point. How do we educate consumers? How do we strengthen sales teams and their commitment to consumer protection? And I think even installers, as they continue to focus on consumer protection and trust that that will strengthen their business, they'll see modifications in their profitability as well. So that's the number one thing. If we focus on protecting our consumers, and then second to that, I think, is strengthening business owners and their acumen. The industry is very young, and a lot of people. You've got a lot of solar companies that are generating millions of dollars in revenue, and many of them just lack the business acumen to ensure that they're cash flow positive and the forward-looking things that are required to maintain that level of business. So I think providing education and support is like the second most important thing that we do, is just making sure that all the business owners have a place to call, for trusted advice and best practices to ensure that they're still in business 10 years from now.
And I hear that same statement across various industries. We do quite a bit in the solar space, but also in a lot of other trades like roofing and siding. And the same thing always comes up. It's companies catch the wave, and then it's like, wow, I don't have the systems in place to handle this. And it's either a scale problem and you plateau out, or if you're subject to any of the environmental factors or the economic factors, a lot of times it's lights out, right? So I think sustainability is key.
Yeah, for sure.
How do you keep up? You mentioned, again, that solar's rapidly growing. It's also a young industry, and lots of different trends and technology are ever present. How do you keep up with all of that? How do you keep up with the new tech, the new trends?
That's a great question. Many people know me to be a pretty transparent person that, like I mentioned before, that collaborates. And so I don't have time to keep up. The answer is I don't necessarily keep up with everything. What I have noticed about myself, though, is the more that I share about, just how we do things and what we're working on, what we can improve, where the gaps are in what we see is best in class, it gets reciprocated with information that is helpful, including like what the newest tech is and, some of the new things that are happening in policy and things in the industry that I otherwise may not be aware of. So that is one of the things that I've loved about the RSA is you've got a lot of really intelligent people that are connected to a lot of different conversations. And those conversations are very useful for the industry. So we've continued to collaborate and try and centralize that information. Like we're starting an RSA newsletter that pulls in information from financing. It pulls in information from technology. It pulls in information from policymaking and best sales practices and things of that nature. because the more we can educate the industry in a consolidated way without bias, that information then gives them access to make new decisions that will better serve the industry. So yeah, I guess I try and tap in and listen to the messages or the communication that seems to be fitting now. I'm not great at keeping up on news. I am on social media, but I have someone that manages that. So I kind of am relying on the experts that I've, kind of affiliate myself with to say, hey, what do you think? So that would be my advice to anyone is if you feel like you have a hard time kind of keeping up or needing to be informed, just surround yourself with more people from more diverse sectors of the industry and just have an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, no, it's great advice. I want to give you the last word. What would you like listeners of this podcast to know about your business or the RSA?
Yeah, thank you. As far as TriSmart Solar is concerned, we're all in on Texas. If you need any support in Texas for any reason, let us know. We do cover the entire state. We have 8 warehouses. The pride we take, our strategic advantage or I guess disruptor is that, we have a solar in 60-day promise. So any consumer that decides to onboard with us and take us on as an installer, we're promising within 60 days they'll be connected to the grid. And that's a statewide median. We also have a 25-year production guarantee and a 25-year O&M service warranty. So we treat customers like they're our own for 25 years or longer. So yes, TriSmart loves what we do. If you need help servicing contracts or want to talk about that, please reach out to me. As far as the RSA goes, which is definitely a passion project for many people in this industry, I want to make it clear that this is a collaborative group effort. I just so happen to be in the current seat of president. There's plenty of other people that could run this thing. If you are a business that's committed to the industry's longevity and it thriving, and you're interested in collaborating with the industry's leaders on best ways to work with local policy makers in your area, deploy best practices for sales and installers, and you want to actually make a difference for the industry, please join us. There's so many things that we can, converse about and discuss. We also need capital to continue to fund our lobbying efforts and the things that we're giving back. It's a for nonprofit trade association. No one's getting paid. We're all doing this because we are committed to the industry. So thank you. I really appreciate the time today.
Oh no, I love it, and I love the mission RSA. I couldn't agree more. You're getting people together that are thinking more than just the day-to-day operating their business and thinking about the industry and how to improve it at large is hard to think of a more worthwhile investment in time and resources. So we're super supportive of those efforts. That's all we have for today. So I want to extend a huge thank you again to you for taking the time, and always great.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That's all for this episode of the Altitude Podcast from Eagleview. Again, I want to extend a huge thank you to Mark Bench for joining the show today and demystifying the world of residential solar. And thank you for tuning in. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to subscribe, give us a follow, and tell your friends to listen in as well. I'm Piers Dormeyer. See you next time on the Altitude Podcast.